Hi, I'm Ilan Rubin. We're going to do a deep dive into the session for my song, Don't Panic. First song I put out in 2023. I wrote it in this room. I recorded it mainly in my lockout elsewhere in LA, where I've got my drums, the amps, some other synthesizers that I don't have here. Overdubs and vocals were done here, mixed by Ilan Rubin per usual. And a little bit about the song. I see this as a more sort of old school pop rock song, leaning a bit late 70s per se. Let's call it alternative rock for today's people. Verse refrain style structure between you and I tipped the hat many times to Jeff Lynne in this one. Let's go ahead and take a dive in. This started as a piano song, so there's not as much guitar as I would have in other tracks of mine. It's also not as track intensive and heavily layered as a lot of my other songs, so it's fairly bare as far as what I usually do. Now, that being said, the piano's not playing a super prominent role in the mix. It's just there kind of anchoring the harmonic content here, and the guitars come in later to add their own beef to what's going on. But right here in the intro, let's go ahead and take a dive in. We pretty much just have drums, some percussion, bass, a synth, and a piano. So let's go ahead and listen to the intro, and I will keep commenting as we continue. Here's Don't Panic. All right, there you have it. Drums, percussion, bass, synth, piano. Now you may be thinking, I don't really hear a synth. Now you do, it's just not very prominent, but it's one of those elements where if I were to take it out, you would notice it. So let's play the drums, percussion, and bass, and then I'll bring in the synth because it is in the lower register, so it's also not entirely obvious. The bass is handling all the riffiness, and this Juno 60 plugin, we'll get into some real hardware later, but the Juno 60 is kind of just anchoring quarter notes, and you'll hear what I mean once I bring it in. So hearing the synth just by itself. There you have that. That's the Arturia Juno 60. Then we have the piano, which, as I said, not super prominent. It sounds brighter when it's by itself, but in the mix, it takes on a darker, and I mean that sonically speaking, element. It's just there really anchoring the chord changes. So, aside from the drums, that's really what I'm singing over, and that's the backbone of the entire track. So, let's get into verse 1 here.
There's no way out of this room with no door. Not even a window to pretend there is more. I'm all alone with me, myself, and I. Never on the same page, we can fight till we die.
That's verse 1. Right here, I'm noticing a plugin that is bypassed and some that are missing. I usually say this at the beginning of these videos, but this is a committed session. So that means everything is committed to the track. Now, all the buses still have the actual plugins live there. I don't have all of them because I just don't have all the plugins that Aaron was using to mix. So it's going to sound close enough for the purposes of these videos, or of this video, which is more about the song itself, the craft, writing, elements that come in and out, and basically the song itself. I couldn't put it any better than that. So, verse 1 here, we have the melody, we have some BVs that come in to accent what the vocal is doing. Very subtle, but a little bit of ear candy that comes in. And then once we get to this hook here, I double and triple the vocal so it feels like things are elevating a little bit.
Till we die, there's no comfort to join. It's a flip of the coin. Don't panic.
Some more of those BVs there.
Panic.
Always enjoy a bit of falsetto.
I've been taking mine, mine. Don't panic, panic.
All right, so that's pretty much our first pass of all things in the song minus the bridges. So the BVs kind of pile up into this nice harmony right here.
Panic, panic.
Ooh, actually, that didn't sound quite right, and that's because these weren't a part of the mix. 1 second.
Panic, panic.
Little fun 7th action there. And then we go straight into verse 2.
I may look calm, but I'm out of my mind. When your head's a prison, you can always do time. There's no cover to join. It's a flip of the coin. Don't panic, panic, panic. I've been taken aback, but I can take back what is mine.
Vocal delays. Okay, so that is pretty much a repetition of everything we heard in the verse before it. The new elements that come in here are these 2 synths. Now, it's another Juno 60 plugin, and that sounds like this. Adding a new percussive element. And then the MIDI that was recorded through that, I sent through my actual Jupiter 6 that I have at the other studio. And that's doing the following. Not the most interesting, but it beefs up the Juno 60 here, which is more prominent, and that sounds like this. So that is what's going on there as far as electronic instrumentation. We obviously hit the hooks again, and then we get into this bridge. Now, depending on how you look at this song, I call it a bridge rather than a chorus because I see the don't panics as the hook, the refrain. That's why I call it a verse-refrain. Verse goes to the hook, refrain, loops back around again, and then the new section of the song to finally unveil itself is this bridge here. So let's go ahead and listen to that.
Hands up, 'cause I'm feeling erratic now. My heart is pumping and I have all the downs. Look out, 'cause I'm manic, but I have found there's no use hiding underground.
Okay, so that's the bridge. We have another synth that comes in, and that is doing the following. Now, as you can tell, and as I've already said, the synths are not very heavy-handed in this song. They're just adding a bit of something. Now, we also have our guitars that apparently came in verse 2, and I didn't notice. So let's hear what the rhythm guitar is doing. It's blending in with the piano. That's why it's not sticking out as much as when the bridge comes in. So here was the introduction to the guitar. As simple as it could possibly be. DI Fuzz, one of my favorites, just adding a little bit of fizziness in that second verse. But when we get into the bridge, where we were originally, these guitars come in. Okay, so that is what's adding to the energy, aside from the additional vocals that come in. But let's go ahead and listen to the synths and the guitars. So that already has a completely different vibe without anything else making the song what it is. We still have a piano. Now, although I recorded the big chords just as I did in the verse, we actually got rid of left-hand stuff and just had the right hand popping in because it felt a little too muddy with everything else that was coming in. So listening to what we just heard with the piano in sounds like this. In fact, you can barely hear it. Very subtle. Maybe they didn't even need to be there. But hey, I like piling stuff on. So once we get out of this bridge, there's a reintro, and then we get into a little guitar solo, and that goes like this. Let's listen to that fuzz all by itself. Now, Aaron must have done something to kind of give that a stereo feel, because that was just myself in a room, one mic. I believe it was a Dwarfcraft fuzz of some kind, very aggressive, as you can hear, and made a little more spacious to fill out some more room. So, a little bit of the thing that happens once in the song. We have a little mini Moog pitch bend dive. One more time. All right, that takes us into verse 3.
Stuck in a loop and I cannot back out. Hey, there's the intersection of my fears and my doubts. I don't know how, but it happened again. I feel the cup crazy, but I never said when.
Okay, so same elements with the addition of these fuzz guitars, which when we listen to them solo... One more time. Fuzzy, there's a pog going there. That's a pedal I like to use for the octave down sound. And what's interesting about that, to me anyway, is that even though it's an octave down and technically in the bass register, it is high-pass filtered quite a bit, which means we're getting rid of a lot of the low frequencies, because I like the sound down in that register, but I don't want it conflicting with what the bass is doing, because the bass is laying down the fundamental pitch of the verse, so A flat. But what these guitars are doing is they're actually highlighting the back and forth between a minor third up to a major third. So those 3 notes. Minor third, up to a suspended fourth, down to a third, and it kind of gives it that relief right there. So that's a new element for that. And as we get to the hook, we have this melotron that comes in. But let's listen first. I get ahead of myself.
It's a flip for the coin, don't panic. I've been taken aback, but I can take back what is mine.
Okay. Same old hook as the ones before, but we have this mellotron that comes in, and it's a full-on orchestra sound, according to the tape bank. I like using the GeForce M-Tron Pro stuff. Lots of tape banks to look at in there, so this one seems to be a full orchestra, not just strings, not just brass, and it sounds like this. That's providing a different melody that's obviously constantly stepping up. And it's just that thing that adds to this third hook without sounding like, okay, we've heard this already. It's adding an element of freshness to it. So let's get up to bridge number 2. In a verse-refrain style structure, I always think it's great to come back to the bridge because it's not going to be that long. But at the same time, if you were to just do verse-refrain, bridge, verse-refrain, that song would be like under 2 minutes, which might be fine with people's attention span these days, but I just don't feel right having something that's below 2 minutes. So let's go to this bridge coming out of that final hook. So this bridge actually develops and is different to the first one. Now here, as you can see the marker, we have this extension. So we have the same bridge pretty much up to this point, but I felt like it needed something a little bit more to give you that feeling of like, oh, that was interesting. I like when music does that to me. So this extension really drills in that final hook in the bridge. Let's listen to it one more time.
Have found there's no use hiding under, no use hiding under, no use hiding underground.
Okay, we do have some nice harmony stacks there, so let's go ahead and listen to what all of those are doing.
Have found there's no use hiding under, no use hiding under, no use hiding underground.
It's fun doing the dive in the vocal in harmony because you got to make sure you're doing it at the same rate or else it just sounds like everyone's losing the pitch. When I say everyone, I mean however many tracks of me there are. Then we have, at the very end, highlighting that final underground, we have this. And I didn't notice until now that it actually pans, so let's hear that.
There's no use hiding under, no use hiding under, no use hiding underground.
All right, and those were just the harmonies, so no lead vocals there. That's all the extra vocal bell and whistle to milk the end of that bridge. And then we get into this reintro. Now, it's a reintro into an outro, and what the outro is doing is it's taking the music of the verses that will be very apparent to you at this point. But we just added, I don't know, I added this vocal here that comes in, and it's just a thing that happens at the end of the song. It's a sort of mantra. Not one I am good enough at adopting myself, but I try. So go to the reintro and then the outro, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Hey, no being dramatic now. Don't you go off into a panic. Hey, no being dramatic now. Don't you go off into a panic.
So that happens 4 times. On these second and third ones, I have this harmony that comes in.
Hey, no being dramatic now. Don't you go off into a panic.
So when I do group vocals like this, obviously Aaron has done a ton to make it sound as spacious as possible. But I don't just step up to the mic and do 16 tracks of that. I will be in front of the mic, and I actually like to split up my harmonies and double tracking between what I was using, which is a Warm 47, and then this SM7. It's got that Soyuz little inline preamp. I'm forgetting the name. I think Launcher it's called. Yeah. Anyway, that's going on here. And I'll do the main vocal, the double, but then for all the group vocals, I'll stand a bit to the left, a bit to the right. I'll stand further back, and I'll go to different points in the room so that the mics are capturing my voice from different places. And inevitably, it will sound more like a group, because if you were to picture 10, 12, 16, however many people singing, you've got the microphone in a stationary point, and it's capturing voices from all around. So that's what I do to try to enhance that rather than it sounding like I'm just multi-tracking myself over and over and over again when I'm trying to make it sound more like a group. If I just want to pile on vocals and harmonies, which I often do, I will just do it between these two mics in a stationary position. So things are very random, and they're meant to be, and that kind of just makes the sound bigger. And then got a little bit of an ad-libby guitar right here, so let's play that along with the drums. Don't Panic. One last thing I want to say about the drum sound on this one. It's very compressed, but I said earlier that I was tipping my hat to Jeff Lynne many times, and I'll let you figure out what those times are. But obviously, the tempo, style of the piano, the verse-refrain element of the song, those are the obvious ones. But some of my favorite drum sounds of his, and I'm thinking of one in particular, is actually a loop that was slowed down. And that loop being slowed down obviously brings the pitch of the drums down. And then when they're very compressed, they have this very splatty quality. Now, it's not as apparent here, but I am happy to apply drum samples, if they need it, if just the recording wasn't captured well enough. That would be my doing, of course. Whenever Aaron engineers everything, sounds great, but I just got to hit record and go sometimes. So this song, I knew I wanted that really splatty snare drum sound. So there's a sample in there that naturally blended well, but it's really pitched down, and it's got that thwap to it. So keep that in mind when we hear the drums by themselves. And it's not the loudest one, because I have a top mic and a bottom mic always, but that one that's having that push, that was a little aggressive, but one more time. There you have it. So, as I said here.
Hey, no being dramatic now. Don't you go off into a panic.
Words of wisdom. All right, that's Don't Panic. I hope you enjoyed it. Go stream it. Spread it around. Thank you very much. Have a good one, and I'll see you soon.